Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm the FX Trade Analyst, and here is the weekly analysis for the coming week for currency pairs on Forex. Last week on our analysis, it was quite interesting, and then within that last week, a lot has happened in the market. Of course, there's been a lot of trade wars with America and Europe, and then Canada, and the war in Ukraine and Russia is coming to an end. So a lot is impacting the market right now, and we've seen that the move in the market is not very steady. It's been a lot of consolidation throughout the last week. Amongst all the currency pairs apart from gold, there's been a lot of consolidation. So let's look into this week and see what's going to happen. Let's jump right into the chart. Let's look at the dollar index. The dollar index has been consolidating. This is the weekly time frame. If you remember last week, we said that we're expecting a dollar index that will drop up to this level. We're seeing that apparently this is where the dollar is coming at this zone here. And then maybe before it begins to move back up to that level. But in the coming week, we see that there might be a retracement. If you remember last week when we looked at the dollar index, we predicted that what we are seeing might be a possible reversal. Remember, we had this our retrace with the 50% retracement, and then we say that what will probably might happen with the dollar is a certain pullback to this level. We felt the dollar was going to pull back to maybe the 50% or maybe get to the 618 retracement before it begins to move back down. Of course, we know that the dollar is bearish, and of course, it might remain bearish until it hits this level or this zone, until it hit this zone that we formally predicted that it was going to come to. If it doesn't hit this about $100 zone, if it doesn't hit the $100 zone, then the retracement might not happen. But for now, we're looking at what is going to happen in the coming week, and in the coming week, we are still banking on the fact that there might be a possible retracement. If you look at the 4-hour time frame, you see that when the market opened, what really happened was that dollar had come down to take out all the lows. It did what we call a liquidity grab, and then it began to push back up and is at this level now. So this level here had been greatly, all the liquidity in this level, in this area, has really been grabbed, and then we might possibly see that dollar might begin to jet off and begin to go back up. So that is what we are still looking forward to, a dollar index that will push back to this zone, to this support here, or maybe use any of the retracements in Fibonacci, the 50% or the 618 fibs, before it begins to come back down. But we just keep monitoring and look out for the possible moves that will happen in the coming week. It's still consolidating, so we when the market opens, we see how the move goes. But I'm possibly seeing a market that will gradually begin to push up and then maybe push back down and then push up and then push back down and then begin to until it goes to retest all of these zones and then before it begins to move back down. If we look at the Euro USD apparently had followed suit with what the dollar index is doing, and then we have seen a lot of consolidation, and then it has beautifully created this trend line and has looked like it has maintained the pattern with this trend line. So in the coming week, of course, if there's going to be a possible retracement with the dollar index, there's going to be a retracement with the Euro USD. But from what I'm seeing right now, I'm thinking that we might see a possible a possible Euro USD that will just come and begin to play with this zone and maybe continue to move up from here if it doesn't break this trend line. But if eventually we see a move that comes to break this trend line and comes back down to test this place, then what we're going to do again is to carefully watch it and see if it's not going to be consolidating in this area like we said. Remember last week we talked about the possibility of a possible consolidation where the prices will begin to range in this area and then before it begins to move back up. But I'm still banking on the fact that all of this liquidity that were created in this move up here, all of the liquidity that was created in this move up here, that I'm seeing a possibility that they will come down to grab all of them before it finally begins to, find its way back up again. All right, so there might be a possible retracement. So let's watch it. But in the coming weeks, I'm thinking that there might be possibility for some interesting trades to happen here. Very, very interesting trade to happen here. So we just look out for it and keep monitoring it. If we push down to the 15 minutes time frame, we're going to see that this trend line. Sorry, I'll just take out all of these markings so we see our screens well. I'll take out all of this, and we see that that trend line might just be what will be respected, you understand, going forward. So if you come to your 15 minutes time frame and you want to take any trade in the week, I'm possibly going to take trades in the coming week looking at this level. So what I'm going to do in the coming week is I'll look for these zones and I'll look for what will possibly happen around this zone. All right, so I'll leave this place as a possible demand zone and see if I'm going to see a trade that will come and retest any of these places before it begins to go back up. So I'm going to be carefully hoping to take a trade at this area. And then for people who trade fair value gaps, if you notice clearly, there's a 15-minute fair value gap that has been created in this move to the upside. And that 15-minute fair value gap is clearly here on this candle, all right? So I'll mark it out again and label it fair value gap. So I'm probably going to see if there's going to be a possible, balancing of that trade in this place. And then if it comes back to test this fair value gap, and then I'm able to see if I can possibly catch a trade to the upside. But then again, remember that the overall expectation for me is looking for a possible retracement to the downside for the Euro USD, and the same goes for the GBP USD as well. If I jump to the GBP USD chart and I go to the daily time frame, you'll see that the move is almost the same as what we witnessed with both the dollar index and the Euro USD, right? Much didn't happen. If you remember the last week analysis, we marked out this zone, we marked out this retracement, and we're hoping for a possible reversal that was supposed to come back, push to the 50, or push to the 618 retracement before it begins to go. But of course, there's been a massive liquidity grab that has happened. Of course, we saw that when the market opened, the market actually pushed up, grabbed liquidity, and looks like it's doing almost like a retracement back to the downside now, right? If I jump to the 4-hour time frame, and we clearly see, and I remove this max, we clearly see that it looks like there might be possible bearish downtrend forming down here, right? So we see that it looked like a bearish downtrend has formed down here. So we're probably going to closely monitor and see what happens with this trade. If I go to the 1-hour time frame, I can see that possibly there might be a possibility that this trade will, keep on moving, to the downside and then retest and then continue until it goes back to test those zones that those zones of those Fibonacci retracement zones before it begins to continue to the upside. Of course, the general move or the general structure of the market is on the upside, but we are looking to trade the retracement. We're looking to see if we can pick possible trades from the retracement that's going to happen in the market before the market begins to move to the upside. And if you clearly look again, you'll see that this trend line is, of course, forming beautifully, even from the upside. All right, so we watch closely what is going to happen if this market begins to respect this trend line. Of course, I might just have to take a trade and I'll just take shorts maybe from any of these zones, leaving my stop loss somewhere above this level and looking for a possible short that will push down to maybe this zone. All right, this support before we begin to. So I might just be carefully looking if I can take a possible trade like this in the coming week. But guys, let's look out for it. If not, if this market begins to retrace and then begins to consolidate in this space, then there might be possible move to the upside. But of course, I'm very, very, very hopeful that I'm going to see a market that will retrace and come all the way down before it begins to go up. So let's carefully watch the market and see what the trade tells us in the coming week. And then we look at the gold. Gold last week actually respected our our predictions. If you remember last week, we talked gold was quite just ranging in this space, and we looked at it and we have said, okay, we are seeing a possible move to the upside. Of course, we expected some retracement, and then the retracement has happened, and then we see that gold had broken its all-time high, has made another new higher high. At this point, gold is at the $3,000 mark. Gold has made the $3,000 mark, and it might continue to move higher. Guys, remember last week when we said that it was ranging in this space, that what might happen is a possible drop. Let me show you. Let me see if I can play that video for you. This is what we have last week. If you remember last week, listen to this.
We might see gold coming back to swipe all of this, and come back maybe to this level, right? To this level before it will begin to go to the upside. Now, why this level? If you notice, there's another support that has done resistance level in this area, right? So I'll just mark it out, right? This might become the next demand zone.
So you see, we clearly talked about this zone, and remember we marked out this zone. This is the zone that we marked out last week, and we said that gold might clearly come back to respect that zone before it continues to move to the upside. And of course, exactly that zone, gold touched it before gold started to move to the upside. So guys, we know what we are talking about. We have carefully studied this market, and we know that gold in particular respect zones and respect structures. If there's going to be a possible pullback on gold, it will respect a certain level, respect a certain move, and then begins to still do what the market wants it to do. So looking at what has happened, of course, you see there's been a very giant move. Now, am I expecting a possible reversal on gold? If we jump down to say the 1 hour time frame and see what has happened, you will see that a beautiful pattern has been generated in this area, beautiful pattern. And then if I go to like a 15 minutes time frame, we'll see that it look like there's a possible build in this area, looking like it might go to the upside. Of course, I've put this trend line to carefully watch is what is going to happen. But if you look at it very well again, one might say that it's looking like a head and shoulder pattern, because if you look at this area, you see that a shoulder has generated here, and this is the head that has generated. Sorry guys, this is the head that has generated here. So we're looking for a possible maybe shoulder somewhere coming on the other side. So if we see possibility that maybe gold might come up and test these levels again and then push back now, and then of course I'm thinking that gold is going to come back to retest all of these zones before it begins to move to the upside. All right, so if you watch it, we're going to just mark out these zones and watch what happens in the coming week. Of course, we'll mark this as a support line. We'll leave it as a support line, and we'll begin to carefully watch what is going to happen in this and how gold is going to respect it. I'll take out this market. I'll see how gold is going to respect these zones before it begins to move. And then if we go back to the 4 hour time frame, what I'm expecting is that I think gold might massively move down. Then if you look at it very well, you'll see that there's another support area that has been generated. All right, this was the all-time high. All right, before it was broken, there was all-time high before it was broken, right? But there's another very interesting area here. All right, another interesting area here. All right, this area is quite interesting because this area had become both a support area, and here it was almost a resistant area. So it's a very interesting zone that we have to look at for, right? Because it had formed a lot of support for here. It had come and gone up. If you look at what has happened with the trades here, moved up, came back, and then the support was holding, came back up again, support held, came back up again, and then pushed back down, did it damage here, tested these zones, and then started to move up again. But it came back to that place, and then it formed support. It could not break. Tried it again. So it tried to had almost A, B, C, and then D pattern before it started to push to the upside. All right, so we're carefully going to look at what is going to happen in the coming week. But what I am going to be looking out for if I'm going to take a trade, like I said, is I will jump down to the 15 minutes time frame and carefully see if I can catch any trade from here. What I will look out for is if this trade carefully pushes back to this level, if we push it back to this level and then test here and begins to pull back, if it creates any fair value gap, I will target the fair value gap to begin to come to the downside, right? So this might just be if it creates a pattern and then there's a fair value gap here, then I'm looking at taking that as a zone to move to the downside. All right, so I might be placing I might be taking a trade from somewhere around there and then place my stop loss just above this level and not the mark above this level, and then maybe take a trade to the last move that was made to the downside. Of course, that's going to give me a 2-to-1 risk to reward ratio. So if I'm able to catch that trade, all right. So I'll carefully be looking at that. But that is a possible scenario. I'm not saying it will form like this. I'll carefully watch the market and see what forms. And then I'll carefully see the trade I'm going to take. But in overall, I'm expecting a goal that will jump and then come back to test these zones before it begins to go back up again, right? Just like we predicted last week about this zone, and we see a perfect respect on this zone before it began to move. All right, so I'm expecting that to happen. This was the zone last week, and it tested this zone before it began to move to the upside. So I'm expecting that gold will possibly come back to test this, and then possibly again there's a liquidity that has been built in this area. All right, so I'm going to be wary of this liquidity in this space. I'll call this trend line liquidity. I know that there's a liquidity here, so gold might see possibility of coming down to grab all of the liquidity here, test this zone before it begins to make its move to the upside again. But of course, gold is on its highest high, above, in fact, little above 3,000 before it starts to retrace. And I'm seeing possibility that gold is still going to continue to go all-time high and high again. But I'm looking at a possible reversal into the coming week, right? So, guys, let's carefully watch and monitor what's going to happen in the coming week. I'm seeing a possible beautiful trade from gold, from GBPUSD, and from EURUSD. Of course, today let me even throw one in again. Let's look at the USDJPY. All right, let's look at the USDJPY and see the possibility of a trade. Of course, if you look at the USDJPY, this is the weekly time frame. You'll see that it has a pattern. It has followed a certain pattern for some time now. It looked like there's a beautiful trend line that has built from this last support area, here. So what do I think might happen? I think that there's a possibility that it looked like USDJPY is going to come and test these levels before it begins to go back up again, right? I'm thinking it might just come back to test this level. So if that is going to be the case, we'll carefully have to look at what is going to happen in the coming week. Of course, if I jump down to the 4-hour time frame, if I jump to the 4-hour time frame, I can carefully look at. I've put a certain trend line. Oh, that's beautiful. So I've put a certain trend line, and you can see that this trend line seems to have been respected over the course of the weeks. Last week we didn't see any major move. Of course, the range had continued to stay in this area because of the move in the dollar index. Of course, there was not major. Of course, we're expecting that the better move will happen in the coming week because the trade wars is really giving the market a tough time. But we'll see a perfect distribution next week. I am expecting a beautiful distribution next week. All right. So if that is going to be the case, then what am I seeing with the USD right? The USD might particularly follow this trend line and continue to move in that regards. So possibly, let's see if this trade will come and test this zone before it begins to move back down, right? I think that will be the possible trade setup I will see, because if you look at it, let's quickly jump to the daily time frame. If we look at daily time frame, and then we'll mark out our last support and resistance line, I think it's just somewhere around this level. It has respected both this level. Let's mark this level, support and resistance line, and then there's this level again. Let's mark this level again. I'll mark it from here. All right. So if you notice, why I marked this level is it was a huge, support line at this point, and of course we saw that it has tested it here again, tested here again, then tested here again, and then it has tested here again, and then we'll see what has formed here, which is the last move in that zone, and then before it starts to move, make its move to the downside. So apparently I'm looking at the trend line and I'm looking at what might happen. All right, so there's a support and resistance line here. So in that line, I'm probably going to expect that the USD JPY will move and then test this area. So I'll carefully be looking at the confluence that is going to happen here. I'll look at it carefully and see if it's going to be a possible trade setup that will happen around this place. Of course, to take a possible trade to the downside. It's on a downtrend, but if I'm going to catch a certain retracement, I'm looking at taking a possible trade with the USDJPY. I'll jump to the 15 minutes time frame. Of course, I have in my mind that it's a downtrend, but it's on a retracement. So I'll carefully begin to look at possibly taking a 2-to-1 risk to reward ratio, just a quick trade that will not be a long trade because I don't know where the retracement or where the move is going to be get tired and begin to reverse. So if I look at that, I look at that trade. If I take out this, sorry, just for us to be clear. If I take out this, maybe take out this, so it's very clear. We see that in the 15 minutes time frame that possibly, of course, we see that the market actually had pushed, down, made its way down, tried to break, it couldn't, and then from here it began to change character to the upside, right? It changed character to the upside, made a new high here, dropped, made another higher high here, of course, dropped back, all right, and then looked like it's going to continue to move to the upside, all right. Remember, this move is a retracement move, so possibly I'm going to be carefully looking at what is going to happen coming down here. And what am I looking for? I'll look for possibly a trade. If I take out these markings, I'll look for a trade in this area. Of course, let me see if I can mark out my trend line for this. So mark out my trend line, and then I'll carefully say, okay, if this move carefully returns to this trend line, and then I'll begin to check a lot of factors. So the first thing I'll do is I'll put my fibs tool and mark this zone to the up, and then I'll see that the 50% retracement coincides with this area of support. I'll mark it out, this area of support. So anything around here seems to be a good trade. But then again, I see that the 618 has fair value gaps. All right, fair value gaps has been created in this move to the upside as well, right? I'll mark them out. I'll mark them out, and then I'll now see, of course, it looks like there's a demand zone here at an order block. All right, I'll mark out the other block for long. All right, so I'll mark out these zones and I'll begin to carefully monitor it. That's how I set up my trade. In the coming week, if I'm going to take a trade in USDJPY, I'll mark up my zones this way and I'll begin to watch what's going to happen. Of course, I'm looking at the fibs. I'll just extend it so we see it clearly, and then I'll push up my charts for us to see. What I'm going to begin to look at is to say, okay, what's going to happen in the coming week? Then I will see if I see a trade that comes to test this support, even though if we clearly look at it, we see that it had done it here. All right, so it has broken this place and went back up and then tested the same support line, and then it's going back up. But I'll carefully watch it, right? Why am I watching it? Because there might be the possibility that it might come back and break this support again, come back to test this zone. All right, remember this zone coincides with this fair value gap here. It might just break, come to this zone, and then before it begins to make its way to the upside again, or possibly we might see it come down to test this trend line again. All right, it might come to any of these lines. It might even take time to do all of this and then meet the trend line at this place before it begins to go up. All right, so we'll carefully watch what's going to happen. But of course, again, there's an order block here. I might not be looking for this to respect it, but who says that I'm not going to monitor the market to see if it's going to do its thing, because market has a mind of its own. It might possibly come down to come and meet this other block before it begins to go back to the upside. All right. So this is what I'm going to carefully watch out for in the coming days in the markets to see the possibility of taking a trade with the USD JPY. All right. So guys, it's going to be a beautiful week, and of course, like I promised, I'll keep bringing you weekly analysis. What I'm going to start to do is, I think I'm going to start to share my trades with you guys. What I want to do, I want to pick up another challenge with I'm going to pick up another challenge, another account, and with the fivers, and then you guys, I will trade it with you guys. I'll share all my trade and share all my processes with it, and then see how I'll pass that account, and then possibly you guys will just see all the moves and all the trades that I take and all the processes and how I will pass that challenge. And if that happens, of course, I'm just encouraging everybody to always jump on this channel to pick up weekly analysis and then follow up for more, because if that live trade comes, I might be posting my live trades in the week for you guys to see, and don't see this trade live. If you want to take the same trade with me, I encourage you, but of course remember, risk, risk all the time. Please guys, trade carefully, trade with a proper reasonable risk size. All right, don't over risk, don't over leverage your account, and of course know that this is just an analysis. It does not specifically say this is how the move is going to happen in the market, but we're expecting the moves to happen because we've seen this chart over a period of time. We've begun to understood and understand the perfect moves in the market, and that's why we'll keep bringing you this analysis. So guys, that is what we're looking out for in the coming week. So stay tuned, keep watching, like, subscribe, and then stay with us in this journey as I continue to analyze the trade and bring you the best possible trade setup every week. Thank you very much for watching.